Hey everybody, this is Brad Dyke, just reaching out to you, and I'm going to grab something here real quick, but oh no, I'll do it in just a minute. Um, so, the reason why I was getting in contact with you guys today is, I did two fun videos today about the Dell Precision T3600 and the T3500, and great chassis, really cool work, great things, but it made me think. There are lots of purposes for these machines that are out there, and one of the greatest ones I think that are really enjoyable, at least from my side of the equation, is the ability for the systems to, how would you say, be reusable, right? That's probably the right term I want to use. What would you do with a system that if it was fairly old? How could you repurpose it? Well, as you've all been out there in the world of systems and routers and so on, most manufacturer-based routers tend to have some vulnerabilities to them. They're also very basic. Even the more expensive ones are very basic. But if you go after something like a SonicWall device or a Cisco firewall device, or something along that way, or you may have inherited a legacy router such as a Nortel or something like that, you discover that they're overly complicated, difficult. You have to use CLI and some things like that. How can you do better? Well, I will tell you this. The Dell Precision 3500 is really, really, really an excellent fit for PFSense. This is a Linux-based image that is something you can download. And by downloading it and putting it on a drive and booting it onto your system on just 200, maybe 140 gig drive, mirrored one RAID drives. That way they're redundant. You do want that. And maybe a 500 gig drive, a spinning disk drive, nothing complicated, that to capture logs, and that would let you do quite a bit for a long time. Go to pfsense.com and take a look at it. The operating system installs just like TrueNAS. Once it finishes installing and you got the very simple basics set up, so that's basically, where's your ISP provider? Well, that's going to be on this one network cable here. And where is your home network? That could be a switch. In most cases, it usually is. Or it could be a switch and another router. Like I want all the multimedia stuff for the house to run on my little D-Link router, which is plugged into my PFSense system, and it's completely isolated from everything else. In other words, there's nothing that could happen on that network, on that router, that could go over to the other network connection you can provide for your local whatevers. Let's say you have what I've got, a lab, and I need lots of bandwidth, right? And I do a lot of things with it. So I can have one copper connection dedicated to a big chunk of my bandwidth, and then I save 300 gigs for the rest of the house to either run through a local router in the house, and that's it. You just plug in a cable and it works. It's that easy. Because that's exactly how these basic routers work. They're designed to be plugged in, set up, and just walk away. So for your house, your connectivity, your TVs, your Netscape, your Netflix, all that stuff, totally, utterly safe. But by going through and setting up your NICs and being able to pair them up correctly can allow you to do quite a bit. Stand by for a second. I'll give you a couple examples of what I'm talking about. Okay, so basically what you've got out here in this industry is you've got a basic machine that has PCIe slots and or PCI slots. And those are the most common forms for what we call the PCI network card. And this is an Intel 1000. It's a server card and it has a single port on it. Now that's great, but it's not great, because if you got 7 slots, you can only do 7 ports. That sucks, right? And you can also get yourself what's called a quad. This is a quad card, minus its adapter set. But this particular one can actually go on the motherboard and is functional. It does quite a bit with it as well. Quad is what you want to do. You want to get like maybe one or two of these, but definitely have one. And then you can do some other things that are really interesting. Like for instance, a lot of people will take a quad card like this. They'll have a single port card, or they'll use the NIC card on the motherboard for the outbound traffic. I don't recommend using the motherboard version. This guy has an NTU on it, that little processor there with memory, much more capable than the onboard motherboard. But let's say you have one of these and you have a quad. Well, with that right there, you can set up one inbound, which you put on your single card. That's to your ISP provider, and that's your inbound. That's what you just call it, inbound. And then you have 4 more ports you can assign for internal. And this first port can be used for your home network, for all the Netflix and routers and Rokus and cell phones and all of that. And that guy can be segmented. The next one can be dedicated to your lab. Or the next one can be dedicated to a DMZ. And the next one could be dedicated to a web server platform, or just a multi-stage web platform. And then that can give you what you're looking for. And you did it with just 2 PCIe cards, or 1 PCI card and 1 PCIe card. And you know, that's, again, if you look here, you'll see that's a PCIe. That's a PCI. See the edge difference? So, you know, it tells you, you know, what you work with. Now, you could do something else. What you could do is you put in a unit like this, but I would recommend, if you're going to put in a card in, put a dual port or a quad, but don't do one port, because the cards go bad. And it's easy just to flip to the next port and just reroute your traffic, opposed to having to take your system apart and putting another card in to replace the single port. But you put one of these in, and let's say it's a dual card, and then you put one of these in, and this is a GBIC card. It's a pretty hefty beast. It's got heat sinks on it and everything like that, but it's a GBIC. And that GBIC means that it uses these special inserts. This is one right here that goes into it like that and locks into place. And voila, I can now hook fiber optics and put that into this very case. So with that being done, now I can take my fiber optic pipe to the network switch in my lab, and I can make that guy the guy who is going to be my lab bandwidth pipe, but it's just a single pipe. So you got one pipe coming in, that's your ISP provider, and you've got one pipe for your lab. And some people do it that way. But what I would recommend is something smarter. This is a dual GBIC card. Remember I said about duals? You want one quad card in your machine for your Cat 5. And then you want a dual GBIC style insert for your ability for your lab, and one for your local home connectivity. Now the GBIC MTU that's the network processing stack, the NTU, or the MPU, sorry, the network processing unit. This guy right here has got lots of resources, so he can really make sure that all your traffic's handled well. But the other cool thing about the GBIC is that you can do 3 or 4 different formats. Let me show you what I mean. So if we go over here to my 10 gig switch, which is right here. Oh, weird, look at that. I got fiber optic plugged into it, which is the yellow cables. I've got 10 gig copper straight, and I've got RJ45s. So check those RJ45s out right here. They're just good old-fashioned, well, they're actually Cat 6, but they're just copper. How can I do that? Well, there's one GBIC type, there's another GBIC type, there's another GBIC type. And these provide you the ability of having a variety of multimedia connections to get what you want. And if you, like for instance, you want to get a 1 gig GBIC, which looks like something like this. And that GBIC has got the fiber optic head on it. Or you can have the 10 gig. Look how like basic it is. It's almost exactly the same. It has to be, because these go into your slots to provide you your general connectivity. So let me put that in there. Voila! I have 2 pairs of fiber, or this could be a Cat 5, and that could be fiber, and these are 1 gigs each. Or this can be a 10 gig, and this could be a 10 gig copper or fiber, or a 10 gig and a 1 gig. So the thing is, it's up to you now. All you have to do is just pick each port and give it a job. Once you do that, now you can really get into some solid firewall designing that is built for your needs and is a genuine iOS-based kind of strategy, but it's all web-driven. That's the other nice thing. No CLI. I mean, you can do CLI. You can always do CLI. No doubt of that. But you don't have to. Just do it in the web interface instead. And it's just like a website. You just go through and you pick your menus and your values and your associations, and you bind things, and you set your forwarders, you set your restrictions, you set your log files. You can do everything you want. You can restrict bandwidth. You can increase bandwidth. You can do BGP sampling. You can do all types of really cool, excellent things that can give you some exposure to your environments. One other really cool thing is that some people will use what's called a hotspot with an RJ45 input, plug it in, and use it as a failover for their primary ISP. And it does some basic services, so you're actually getting some service out of it, so it's just not wasted money, but it can give you redundancy, which a lot of people don't have. So if you have a cell phone service out there and you're using it, take advantage of that fact. And if you've got a hotspot, ask for the 45 version. That means ask for the ability to connect an RJ45 cable to it, and they'll swap it out for $1 or $2. And the hotspot's still doing its job, its normal job, but now you can actually offer it as a alternative pathway for inbound, outbound traffic connectivity. And of course, to do that, you'd want a dual port NIC card for that, and you'd have your normal ISP, maybe MetroNet or Time Warner or something like that, and then the second one goes from your Verizon hotspot, and then you can set up redundancy models the way you want. So with that being said, this is a really great way to give new life to a system that's able to do quite a bit. Now that leaves you with the last part of this. Well, when you treat a PC like you want it to be a server, what do you really got to do? Do you need to take out the power supply and put in 2 different power supplies? What's called a short squat, which has got in the back of the chassis, as you can see here, it would have 2 smaller power supplies, more expensive because they're more condensed, and they would act as primary, secondary. Well, to answer that question, I would say no. If you really wanted to do it and you really wanted to understand infrastructure, you would put in what's called a 500 watt or 750 watt UPS, an uninterrupted power supply. APCs are fine. It's a good manufacturer. Triple is good. With a USB output that will go into the back of your machine, and it will tell your operating system, hey, you've lost power, please begin to shut down. That's all you need. And it will eventually get your system to the place where all the logs are written, it's ready to power down, and it shuts itself down. You still have to go down there later once the power is back, but you hit the power button and you start your system back up. Are there systems out there that can allow you to remotely reboot and power up? And the answer is yes and no. How much money do you have? Well, the answer is yes. If you don't have a lot of money, then I would say no. It requires some real complication, and it's just not. I mean, you don't need that. Just have the UPS there to provide protection for your environment. The second thing I'd recommend that you do, if you've got fiber optics, you have no problem. If you've got a fiber coming into the house, you don't have what we call outside sourcing of electrical introduction. Electrical introduction means lightning, static discharges, things that happen that come in from the outside world. And they do tend to take routers, Wi-Fi, access points. They take them out. And, a lightning strike doesn't have to be technically close. It can still fry, sensitive equipment like access points and routers and networks and so on. There isn't a real solution to that except for offering a common ground to your switch environment. Or your switch has 3 prongs for power. What do I mean by that? I mean that basically it has to have, let me see if I have a connector here. Yeah, here we go. It has to have 3 points for the power. 1 positive, 1 neutral, and 1 hot, or black. Negative, positive, ground, basically. And that does help a lot to dissipate, charge dissipations. So you can look at that as well. But those are about it. I mean, you put a UPS on the machine, maybe make sure your environment's well grounded from any electrical shocks or things like that could happen. Both from you rubbing with your dog and playing on the carpet and going up and, frying something, which you won't, by the way. But lightning discharges in Ohio have been really, it plagued me a few times. I got to admit, it was, I was impressed at how I thought it was secure, and lightning just got a little closer, and it didn't matter. It was fried, and we had to go and replace it. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion. It's important to give inspiration. It's important to inspire. It's important to think outside the box. And this kind of stuff is really just fun stuff. It's kudos to you out there that choose to not to just throw things away, because this industry begs you to do that. They don't want you to do anything but the latest and greatest. They want them to buy from you. They want you to buy from them, and then just throw it away. Kind of like an Apple mindset. That's why I don't ever use Apple. I just don't believe that, you buy something for 2 years and throw it away, and it costs you $400, $500, $600, $800, $1,000. I'm like, wow, that's just antiquated and very poor across the board. Things should be able to function and be useful beyond their initial life cycle. That's what makes taking care of your environment, taking care of your community, by not filling your landfills with a bunch of junk. Recycle your gear, take it to Goodwill, take it to some recycling facility. They'll take your stuff. Some of them will even pay you money. But make sure, if you don't have a need for it, I do this all the time, take it to a school or church or a library, and if it is just too old, take it to a recycling facility. But before that, you'll find there's a lot of useful things. And the last part of that is to defend the wives of said technicians who are married, sometimes husbands. You can gracefully adorn your home with technology. In other words, there's a limit, right? Too much, just too much. PC in every room kind of thing, no need for that. If you're smart and you use these devices correctly, they can be out of sight, out of mind, and they're providing connectivity, they're providing functionality, they're providing backup, they're providing all the things you need, but they're in the substructure of the house, or they're in places where your wife or husband will all say, "Oh, why is this here? Why do we have 5 of them?" That kind of question. It's true, I have a number of systems in my house, but they're gracefully in the right places. And same with access points, same with cameras, same with many other forms of technology, such as if you've got an Alexa or monitors and display screens, you can make a real mess out of things real quick if you don't know what you're doing. And that's what happens a lot of times. So with that being said, this is Brad Dyke. I'm going to sign off now. I hope you guys have a great week, and please be safe and God bless.